Friday, thankfully, May the 24th. Let's get to today's top stories before we begin this Memorial Day holiday weekend. New IVF legislation has been introduced by Senators Ted Cruz and Katie Britt that prohibits states from blocking IVF services. Stay tuned. I'll tell you why this bill misses the issue completely, according to some. Also, it's Friday, as I mentioned, my friends, with Memorial Day around the corner, marking the unofficial start of summer. And what better way to kick off the three-day weekend than by going to the mailbag and reading emails that you, the people, send right here to me directly. That's coming up in just a few minutes. And then later, a case involving a Maryland law that bans certain semi-automatic weapons like the AR-15, rejected by the Supreme Court this past Monday. Details on that. And I'll bring in Turning Point USA contributor Joe Bob to discuss in detail. Joe Bob will be here. But some of you might have joined the watch party last night as President Donald Trump delivered an eventful night campaigning in the South Bronx to reach the minority voters. And man, was it epic. Trump delivered his speech in the city's most impoverished and diverse section, South Bronx in New York. The rally, expected to have around 3,500 people, actually reached an estimated 30,000, according to numerous reports. Quite remarkable. AOC had to chime in with snarky comments, typical, predictable, tweeting God is good over the possibility that the rally would be ruined by rain. And she was right about one thing: God is good, and the event was a success in favor of Donald Trump, however. AOC also stated in the past that if you're not a Democrat, you don't belong in the Bronx. Yet, here's how people from the Bronx actually feel about that statement. Listen.
I don't think she should be here in the Bronx. I actually don't know any Democrats living in the Bronx.
Look, AOC, look at the tremendous support for Mr. Donald J. Trump.
You need to tell her that she need to stay out the Bronx, because look at all the people around. Everybody's here for Trump.
I am a Democrat, and I belong here.
And who are you voting for?
Donald J. Trump.
I am a Democrat, and I belong here. That guy had a big smile on his face. In fact, people were ecstatic that President Trump came to the hood to campaign. Here's more.
This is the first time president has actually came to the hood. I know presidents have came to the Bronx before, but we're talking about Woodlawn, Riverdale. He has came to Morrisania, South Bronx, the hood.
You said you've always voted Democrat, but this year it's going to change. Why is that?
Because I've seen the change go for the worse. With the Bidenomics, with the Democratic Party, I've been Democrat all my life. And Donald Trump, he just has the right answers.
We need Trump here. That's why I'm voting for him. We want change. We want the city red again.
Go Trump.
Go Trump.
We want change. We're voting for Donald Trump. Trump's rally was more of a success than people predicted, and many Democrats were frankly left shell-shocked. Listen to this.
What was the crowd like, and what kind of response did he get?
Well, certainly a bigger crowd than I think Democrats would like to see, particularly given this is one of the bluest counties in the entire country.
Bigger than the Democrats would like to see, that's for sure. The massive turnout in the Bronx is a victory that hurts the Democrats to admit, obviously. Joining me now to discuss President Trump's event in the Bronx is Andrew Giuliani and Gavin Wax, who was at the big event. Welcome to you both. Gavin, let me start with you. Give us your impression. You were on the ground there yesterday. I saw you popping up on social media in different places. What are your thoughts? What was the energy like there?
Oh, the energy was through the roof. It was electric. It was historic. The MAGA hats, red MAGA hats, as far as the eye could see. I mean, no one was expecting this type of turnout. And, President Trump beat all the expectations. He beat all the odds and all the naysayers and the haters. We were talking about AOC in the open. AOC was praying for rain. She was hoping people wouldn't show up. They were hoping they could shut down the subways. I mean, they were scared about a potential successful rally because it shatters their narrative and it shows that President Trump has wide support and appeal in the bluest of areas. So great time, great event, and one for the history books.
Sure, and for rain, it was Trump raining on the Democrats' parade is the way it turned out yesterday. 30,000 people. That is remarkable. It's the first Republican president for sure. Ronald Reagan went there in 1980 and did the same thing Donald Trump did yesterday. He talked to these people like they're people. Not talking down to them, not condescending, had a conversation because he knows a lot about New York, obviously. He knows New York people, and he had a real conversation. He connected with the people in the Bronx, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people were cheering him. He didn't pander. He didn't change his rhetoric or his policy. He was the same Trump he always is. Did he throw some New York flair into the mix? Absolutely. He could speak about New York. This is the city he was born in. He was raised in. He built his business empire in. He's very familiar with it, and it's very close to his heart. That's why he showed up in the South Bronx, of all places, to let his voice be heard and to bring the MAGA agenda to all Americans, whether they're in the South Bronx, whether they're in Detroit, Rust Belts, red states, blue states. It doesn't matter. It's an uplifting message for everybody, and they love to see it. I mean, again, people were lining up. The line was a mile deep, wrapping into the neighborhood. I mean, so many people couldn't get in. There were more people outside of the park trying to get in than were inside, mostly because the city of New York didn't approve a bigger permit, but it is what it is.
Now it's the Donald Trump Stadium tour. Now I want to bring in Andrew Giuliani. Andrew, thank you for being here. Look, Donald Trump gets 100,000 people to the Jersey Shore, 30,000, maybe more in the South Bronx. He thinks he can win anywhere. Last night he says he thinks he can turn New York blue. I think that's a bit of an uphill climb, but what do you say?
Well, first off, I got to give kudos to Gavin Wax, because this idea was generated with Donald Trump and Gavin Wax back in December at the New York Young Republicans Club, of which Gavin reads. And for anybody who wants to actually see what MAGA looks like into the 21st century, deeper into the 21st century, I'd recommend getting Gavin's book about the MAGA majority, because it really, really is amazing. But last night, truly, and I said this in my speech before President Trump came up, you know, Babe Ruth has played the Bronx, Derek Jeter, Reggie Jackson, 3 home runs, Mr. October, but nobody played the Bronx the way Donald Trump did. I guess maybe the Pope came close, right? The Pope comes close. You got to give Muhammad Ali. But when you talk about these blue counties that now we're taking a look at Donald Trump, what's the reason? It's because inflation has been through the roof. It's because gas prices are through the roof. It's because you have 2 foreign wars that weren't going on under Donald Trump. And they realize they've been lied to time and time again by leftist politicians and the illiberal media. And that's why you have people that Republicans have never reached out to before. Donald Trump is reaching those people, and they realize, wait a second, our lives, our quality of lives are far better when Donald Trump was the commander-in-chief than this current guy who says he's in the 20th century.
And like I pointed out here, Andrew, the last person to go to the Bronx was Ronald Reagan, 1980. Talk to the folks like they're ordinary Americans, which they are. They're Americans. And you could hear it all through the crowd last night with Gavin and everybody else talking to them. Let me ask you this, Andrew. This works. The Jersey Shore, 100,000. Bronx, 30,000. How about L.A.? How about Chicago? How about Philly? How about Donald Trump just takes the stadium shows on the road? What do you think of that?
I love it. I love it. And one of the things that I told the former and future president right after he did the event in Harlem about a month ago, after one of the court days, was, hey, look, you know, continue to focus on New York, but also don't forget about New Jersey, because New Jersey falls before New York. And certainly don't forget about Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, because Pennsylvania falls before all those. And look, I love New York. Gavin's a native New Yorker and all that stuff. We would love to see New York red. But if New York is competitive and it's one of these things that the Biden campaign is thinking about come October, then that means Donald Trump's going to win 330 electoral votes. And I know math is racist these days, but my math tells me that 270 is all you need.
Yeah, and last time I checked, and here's the thing. I've been telling people for a while, I talked about this yesterday, because the Trump campaign is now winning in New Hampshire. People told me that wasn't possible. He has taken the lead in the latest poll in New Hampshire, which means New Hampshire is competitive. It means Virginia is competitive. Maybe he doesn't flip New York, but if he gets Virginia, wouldn't that be something? If he gets New Hampshire, you're on your way to 350. And Gavin, it starts with people in places like the South Bronx saying, you know what? We know what it costs to go to the grocery store. We know what it costs to pay our electric bill. We know the cost when they ship in illegals and take over our community centers and give them to people that are non-citizens. And you can feel it in the Bronx, which that ripples across America, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with everything that my good friend Andrew Giuliani was just saying. I think making this play here in New York is a brilliant idea. It's great for optics. And look, New York City is a microcosm of the country. You can talk about crime. You could talk about corruption. You could talk about the economy. You can even talk about the border crisis, all here in New York City, in the country's largest media market. So all of these things have a cumulative effect. Even in New Jersey, a ton of the crowd was coming in from the Philadelphia metro area. They were coming in from PA. But listen, the issues facing the South Bronx are the issues that many Americans are facing. We have Andrew Giuliani on the show right now. Rudy Giuliani, the greatest mayor of this city. When he was in office, the crime rates in that area, Morrisania of the Bronx, were 40% lower as a whole, statistically. We looked those numbers up on ComStat. And what have they seen in the last 20, 30 years since? They've seen all of their quality of life indicators go down. They've been ruled by one-party Democrat machine politicians. They've run the Bronx into the ground. They've run New York City into the ground. They want to run this country into the ground. If you want a future run by Democrats, continue to vote for them. But if you want real hope and change, you got to vote for Donald J. Trump.
And Gavin, I think you've hit something really important here, and I'll toss this to Andrew, and here's why. We're 33 days away from the first debate agreed to by Donald Trump with all sorts of rules put forth, the most recent being that they have to sit down for the hour and a half, 2 hours, because obviously Joe Biden can't stand for 90 minutes. We understand that. But it's a test balloon. I mean, as soon as I heard about this, I said, that's great. Love to have a debate in June. But they're testing to see if Joe Biden can survive 90 minutes on the stage without an audience, doesn't matter at all. They'll be prepared to put in a different candidate. It's been an open conversation for a while. But I think what Gavin said, Andrew, is exactly right. It's the Democrats taking us down this road. It's not just Joe Biden. He doesn't live in a vacuum. He lives in a Democratic world with Democrat operatives and the people surrounding them. So no matter who the Democrats put up, if it's Joe Biden, fine. If it's somebody else, though, the same rules apply. They took us to the grocery prices we had, to the gas prices we have, to the problems we have in Ukraine and Gaza and the southern border clearly. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. And I take Michelle Obama as a perfect example, right? A lot of people are like, oh, if Michelle Obama gets in, then it changes the game and all this stuff. What has Michelle Obama expressed to make Americans' quality of life better? What has she expressed that's actually going to stop these two foreign wars? What has she done that's actually going to turn inflation around? What has she done that's going to make America energy independent again? Absolutely nothing. So I think you're right when it comes to this. And your point is actually really good on this. And look, I understand President Trump is chomping at the bit. He wants to debate Joe Biden as many times as possible. He said last night, we're not agreeing to sitting down. So I think that's one really key part. And also, I would actually wait until August to do that first debate. I know you want to do it right now, but I would wait until after the Democratic convention to actually do that, just because I don't want that knockout punch to come in the second round and all of a sudden we're talking about a different candidate over here. Look, he's going to do great. We know he's going to absolutely run circles around Joe Biden. Joe's back in the 20th century, as I mentioned before. But sometimes a little patience on this one goes a long way.
And Gavin, I'll give you the last word on this conversation. Do you think it matters? I don't think it matters as much as I once did. If it's Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or somebody besides Joe Biden, look, the Democrat message is a failing message, whether it's the border or Bidenomics, which, of course, they don't say anymore, and a host of other things that we've discussed. Do you think it makes a difference? Bring us home.
Actually, I think Biden, believe it or not, is their best candidate. I mean, polling backs that up. Many people still think he is Scran Joe. If you replace him with the likes of a Kamala Harris or any one of these other left-wing lunatics like Gavin Newsom, the polling numbers are even worse for them. I mean, they're even more in the gutter, and they lose the advantage of incumbency. So they're really in a lose-lose situation, particularly if they sidestep Kamala Harris. That means they would be sidestepping the first, black woman to be in that position. So the Democrats are in a bind. They really have to, figure out what they're going to do here, but they are no good options. And I think regardless of who they end up putting in, I think this is an election for Republicans to win. I think this is an election for Donald Trump to win. I think a lot of things are working in his favor, but we got to act like we're 10, 15 points behind, like the old saying goes, and, stay strong until November.
Right. And get your friends to vote, get your neighbors to vote, get people to vote. No question about it. Gavin, Andrew, thank you both for being here. Great stuff. Good conversation.
Thank you.